Thank you for being here, Barry.
Thank you for being here, Adrian.
Now the formalities are out of the way. And thank you guys for coming. I don't know, I wasn't listening rudely to Stephanie, but the format is this. I'm gonna ask some questions, spin Barry into a state of mild confusion, and then he's going to show some cartoons. I'm gonna interrupt every couple seconds, and then have more questions, and we'll go to you guys. You're gonna ask more brilliant questions, and then we'll end it all in a 5-question lightning round, in which the stakes are raised to a level before unseen. So think of great questions, and then forget them and then rethink of another better question throughout the night. Okay, so here we go. So Barry, cartoons, a brilliant form of storytelling, and you come from a great literary tradition along with James Joyce, Graham Greene, Margaret Mitchell, all amazing storytellers whose first name and last name start with the same letter. Discuss.
Well, alliteration is my life, as you know. I don't bear any resemblance to any of those people. I've never been mentioned in the same sentence, but thanks for giving me some cred.
I don't know if this is true, but we're about to find out. And if it's not true, even more hilarious. But you live in the same house that Arthur Miller wrote Death of a Salesman in, is that correct?
Crazily enough, I do, in Roxbury, Connecticut. There's a little shed in the backyard that the story goes that he built himself. He was handy, unlike me. I also don't write plays or anything.
Right.
But he built the shed himself, and after he hammered the last nail into the roof, he made himself a cup of coffee and wrote the first act of Death of a Salesman, which is, intimidating enough to have in your backyard.
Right.
And I've gone in there a couple of times to try and get ideas, but I'm not a spiritual person. I didn't feel anything, and so I just stay in the main house.
Right. If you're ever having cartoonist block, all you have to just take a nail. Just nail it into anywhere into the shed, go back in.
You don't want to see me using tools.
Swing wildly with a hand. All right. I feel like we're off and running, quite frankly.
This is going great.
Yeah. So you're Canadian, and Canadian author Margaret Atwood, she's an author.
Again with the literary figures.
Right. Yeah. I just want to continue to make you more and more insecure through the night. But she wrote a 6-word short story that I think that every Trump voter should take on board. And I'm going to read the entirety of this 6-word story now. Longed for him, got him, shit. And you've recently become an American citizen, and now that The Handmaid's Tale is basically becoming real, is it all the more frustrating / exhausting to know as a Canadian that America had this in us all along, which you might have known, and then how? I don't know. What is my question?
I'm dying to know.
Right. Knowing that America had this in us, are you more of the magnanimous, I've still got a passport, come with us, we'll be your savior, or are you you guys, you did this to yourselves?
I hurt for the country. I feel it. It's a terrible feeling. There's no gloating rights at all. I'm glad I have my passport. I think about leaving if I got sick or if my wife got sick. I think we would probably leave.
Yeah.
And I think you guys always did have it in you. This seems natural. Trump seems like Casey at the bat, or it seems like a very American thing that's happening, and hopefully it won't get too out of hand.
Do you think when you're cartooning, is there an identity within, is there something in you, it's there's a Canadianness or an Americanness or some merging of those things? I know that's
in the work itself, you mean?
In the work itself, or something that psychologically comes through you where you're oh, I see this as being one or the other.
Sometimes I'll do a line and I'll say, it's a very Jewish-looking line. But I don't think any of my work looks particularly Canadian.
That's my favorite answer yet. And we're just at the beginning. Just to keep the literary stuff flying at you, the original title for Where the Wild Things Are was Where the Wild Horses Are.
Wow.
But Maurice Sendak couldn't draw horses. So when his editor asked what he could draw, he said, things. That's why it's called that. So that ended up in his book. And I wondered, do you ever come up against limitations in your drawings where you're I want to do it this way, but crap, I only have the capacity to do it this way. Is that ever?
Well, I mean, your limitations form your style as much as your strengths do. I mean, since I started doing New Yorker covers and doing art that had to be done right away, there were times when I turned in a drawing that, you know, in the past I would never have let that get published. I mean, it was done so quickly, and half of it repulses me, you know. But it's come to the point where you're trying to get an idea across, and you can't be too precious about, you know, all your weaknesses as a draftsman. So,
do you kind of know when you're leaning towards a weakness, and I mean, do you know, like, do you sort of say, like, oh, I can't. No, yeah. Jewish lines are great, but the Canadian lines you can't even tell the difference. But is there stuff you actively? I'm asking you to tell us like what you're bad at, but well, also what you're great at. Like one thing you know you can always lean on if you're.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I can lean on. I wouldn't, because as soon as I would say that, I would have a hard time drawing it. You know.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough.
I'll never be able to draw Trump again if I
right.
say I can draw Trump.
Right.
I can't draw cats. I mean, I find pussycats very hard to draw.
Oh,
and I did one drawing of Obama like herding cats, and I had to draw a lot of cats in it, and
right.
that was probably good for me, in a way. I
right.
Probably.
So you feel like dogs, though, easier to draw than
dogs
cats?
Easy, cats hard. Yeah,
that's interesting. Right, fair enough. I thought we would go to some cartoons, so just I feel like you're known for those.
I have one of these in my hand.
Go nuts.
Okay. This is all anyone wants to talk to me about.
Right.
Oh, thanks. You're so nice. But I don't want to talk about this. Not now, anyway. And then there's this guy. But so this is an older drawing. This is a drawing, strangely, I did in Canada before I knew I would ever live in the United States, before I knew I'd ever be asked to draw American icons or figures. And it was when I was messing around with this looser style that I work in, this pen and ink style. Before that, I was drawing reverential charcoal drawings of Dorothy Hamill and Electric Light Orchestra and hockey players. But this is just messing around with pen and ink. And it's George Washington it's sort of an inane biography of George Washington as president, family man, righty, what a guy. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. And it's sort of odd because this was one of the first things I had printed in the New Yorker. And it also really doesn't mean anything, and it's George Washington and a lot of other president's allergies. And none of them are real. I mean, I have a lot of allergies myself, so I guess it's somewhat autobiographical.
Right.
But like here you can see Calvin Coolidge, it says he's allergic to egg yolks, milk, house dust, tobacco, chives, wheat, insect bites, and cosmetics, none of which are true. And Tina Brown bought it and used it.
That's like this one is brilliant to me because this seems to speak to something that's like the deepest in your brain. Like when you're coming up with these,
as deep as it goes, unfortunately.
Right. But when you're doing these, can you remember back to why you were like you're just making yourself laugh at this point?
Making myself laugh, yeah. I'm sure I was doodling in a sketchbook. I probably had a book of presidents open.
Right.
And I don't know. It was fun to draw Grover Cleveland swollen.
And Lyndon Johnson, chocolate, wool, penicillin, fish.
Right.
I mean, say no more.
Yeah.
Everything is right on the page.
It's all there. Anyway, so I wasn't doing political stuff at the beginning. I was working for Entertainment Weekly, was the first regular gig I had, and they let me do a cartoon in there, some of which made sense, some of which didn't. This was when Michael Jackson, I'm with his wife or girlfriend or vessel, and it's the ultrasound, and you can see this is the sort of thing I was doing for them every week.
Right.
Until Monica Gate, when Monica Lewinsky happened, all of a sudden it seemed like I was being asked to draw political figures. They had, become more pop culture, or just that's what anyone wanted to make jokes about. So.
Well, to that point, were you politically engaged, or were you just like, I'm just drawing what I find interesting, and then this sort of created a political engagement?
Yeah, I was not politically engaged at all. Hardly am now, but I'm aware of things. But I mean, back then I just wanted to do Michael Jackson every week. I was doing lots of Michael Jackson jokes. I sent the New Yorker a bunch of Michael Jackson jokes too. That's
interesting to me too, because basically, in some way, do you feel like your tendency is towards pop culture, and right now politics more and more have become a pop culture thing?
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
I mean, I'm very out of touch with pop culture now, I have to say.
And now you only know politics.
To the degree that I know anything, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So this is one of the earlier New Yorker covers that I did. And before I was doing political covers for them, I mean, I was living in or near Manhattan, and my idea would be to walk around the city with a sketchbook and see what made me laugh in the city.
Right.
Hot dog vendors, wow, that's crazy, you know. And so I'd take a cab, and it seemed like the cliche then, and cartoons are often based on cliches, but the cliche was that you go in a cab and you tell the cabbie all your problems. So that it seemed funny to have some guy, you know, on a faux psychiatrist couch in the back seat, and the driver is Sigmund Freud.
That's amazing.
But I guess if this was updated, Freud would be an Uber driver now.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously. And this was, I'll just keep talking about these, shall I?
No, I think it's great.
Yeah, this was also an early New Yorker cover that apparently had the staff up in arms. They were disgusted that O.J. was going to be on the cover of the vaunted New Yorker, and this could have been a New Yorker cover from years before if O.J. Simpson wasn't in it. I mean, the lifeguard could be watching TV, but you know, the decline began here, I think.
Right. And real quick, when it comes to the New Yorker covers, do you title them, or do you come up with like vague ideas, or do they refine that, or what's the process of titling?
The titling, I mean, they usually ask me to think of a title while I'm working on it, and as soon as I've handed it in and I'm spent and the shell of what you see here, they ask me for a title, and I give them one if I can, and
right.
If I can't, if I'm just not up to putting a few words together, they have smart people over there who can think of puns and stuff.
Love this one.
And this was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This is the first cover to get me in a lot of trouble.
Right.
It's luckily before email, so I was getting angry phone calls and faxes and telegrams. Yeah.
Did you get phone calls?
I did, yeah, I did.
And do people,
how am I going to explain that to my son? I got a few of those, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. That's have no death threats, right?
You know, on the fist bump cover, someone said, "Didn't I see you in your car today?" Sort of menacingly.
Right.
But then again, it might have been a friend who saw me in my car. I don't know. It seemed kind of menacing. And this is, I mean, I've been extremely lucky, and this was a gig I had for a while illustrating the great Frank Rich's column in the New York Times.
Yeah.
And this was for a piece about erasing a memory of war, or erasing a record of war. And this was another piece for Frank Rich's column about the lengths to which this guy's sitting on the ceiling so that the thumbs down on the television will be a thumbs up to him. And then this is one of my first Lewinsky, Bill Clinton drawings for the New Yorker. It was just a small spot about the severity of their lies, and so their Pinocchio noses are being rated as from kidding to exaggeration to fudge, half-truths, bent facts, white lies, falsehoods, and ultimately perjury.
It's sort of a bummer because now it's just like Pants on Fire is like the starting point. And then
now there's just two lines. And this is also sort of a bummer now. I mean, this has resonance now with the current administration, obviously, but did I just say resonance? Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
Anyway, this is obviously Hurricane Katrina. And this is when Bush and Cheney were rumored to be not getting along with each other.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
And, I mean, Dick Cheney would never lose control like that, but it's all an excuse to draw a prissy Felix Unger, George Bush face.
From that era, like George Bush W. Has a pretty amazing face.
He does. Presidents tend to have amazing faces.
Yeah. Because Cheney, he's just a guy.
Right.
But you can see. Well, we'll get into. I'll ask now. Pre-Trump, who is the best face? Would you say Clinton, W, or?
They're all amazing to draw.
Yeah.
It seems like, and you sort of. I mean, Obama was intimidating to start with, but he became easy to draw, relatively. Here's a whole other depiction of George. I mean, the last one's these two are sort of realistic. This one's just got a dot for an eye, and this is obviously the you broke it, you own it Pottery Barn rule.
Wait, that's actually interesting. The two different, the different angles. Why did you elect to do it this way? With the dot for an eye?
I think why I elected to do it this way is because before I do a finished piece of work, to send the idea to the magazine, I'll do a very, very rough drawing. And I think I probably drew it that way in the rough drawing, and it worked that way. I think I tried to do it more realistic several times. I usually go crazy and draw these things as many times as time will allow, as a deadline will allow, and it seemed like that worked the best. So. And there's a thing about taking two disparate news events and tying them together. That's a nice thing to do. I mean, it's a funny way to find things about different stories. So this was obviously Ahmadinejad after he had come to New York. Said there are no gays in Iran. Around the same time, Larry Craig, the congressman, had foot tapped under the bathroom stall. So just put those two together.
That's amazing. And actually, when you find something like this, do you read the newspaper? Do you watch the news? And does that come to you in a weird instant, or are you sort of like, we've got A, let's look for B? Or
no, it just seemed to come at once. You'll sort of giggle and
right.
Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah, I don't know how it. And this was Obama, and when he was running against Hillary Clinton, and who would you want answering the red phone at 3 o'clock in the morning? And I mean, I don't think either of those are particularly accurate likenesses of them, but there's something in the drawing that was good enough for them to put it on adequate enough for them to put it on the cover, right? It expresses whatever it has to, and it gets us to the next slide. To this thing.
This guy.
Yeah. So this was a gag that it just seemed funny to put all the innuendo into one picture, everything that was being whispered about candidate Obama, and we threw in a burning American flag and a portrait of Osama bin Laden on the wall as well. There was also a Nazi plate that was not used. That went too far. We wanted to make it look as ridiculous as possible, but. The Obama people that called you, were they just afraid that this could undermine, or I think that everyone was afraid. I mean, it was after W. Bush, and there was a lot at stake, obviously,
right.
As there always is. But,
Did you, and when you're reaching this far, because I guess this is the most explosive of your coverage. So the response was explosive.
Yeah.
So was there any hesitance on your part? I guess you're just drawing it at first just to see if it's even worthwhile, but was there any point where you were like, we can't lose this election?
No, I wasn't thinking that way. I was just thinking, like, what kind of an idiot am I going to look like if people don't find it incredibly funny?
Right.
Which they did not, you know?
At first,
yeah. I mean, now, the audience, people aren't throwing things at me, but at the beginning they were, and Obama commented on it that it disgusted him, and so did John McCain, and a lot of people were saying, I get it, but what are those people in the middle of the country going to think?
Right.
So,
did Obama ever did he ever retract that, or is he...
Retract that?
Yeah, did he ever call you and
He did not, but there were some subsequent Obama covers that were hung in the White House for a while.
Oh, right.
I was asked to sign a print. Actually, when the book came out, or when I was working on the book, my editor thought it would be a good idea if Obama writes the foreword, which would be great. So I wrote a handwritten note to him, and I drew a picture of him and Michelle looking at this cover, both of them, like rolling their eyes. But I never heard from him. So. Anyway, this is the sketch that I sent in. So this is what the sketches look like when I'm, torturing myself over them at home. And in the window you can see Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter looking aghast. But it was just one too many steps. You know, the picture by itself seemed to, you know, we're going to let it make or break by itself.
Yeah, yeah.
And a few months later, this is just, who is this again? Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, acting it out for Entertainment Weekly magazine.
That's amazing. And Jon Stewart
And
actually...
do they not, they don't have an American, I never noticed, but even, they wouldn't burn an American flag. They don't have that in the fireplace. I never noticed that.
And Jon Stewart was one of the first defenders of the cover, right?
He was, yeah. He came on and said, "Hey, everybody, it's a cartoon. Well, you know, what are you getting so upset about?"
Right, yeah.
And this one was in David Axelrod's office. It was when, it's sort of two stories, when Obama was putting a cabinet together and at the same time getting a family dog.
Look how well drawn those dogs are. It looks like those were just whipped them off in one shot, unlike cats, you know? So much
right.
better.
Actually, I have a problem with the way those dogs are drawn.
I love especially the first one, the brown and white one.
You see? I prefer the, okay, never mind. I was trying to banter with you, but I got nothing, so let's go to this. This is probably one Obama might not have liked. This is the rollout, the clumsy rollout of Obamacare. And we have outmoded technologies like that big phone and the floppy disk and Kathleen Sebelius.
That's amazing.
And here's Romney and Ryan when they were such a cute couple and America's sweethearts. And this is another Romney, Mitt Romney, how we miss him now. Where have you gone, Mitt Romney?
Actually, I've got a question about those last two. This one having the central image and the other one having more images. Does the New Yorker, I don't know, like, why this way instead of like spreading those over different things? Do you have a sense of why they do that? They're just like, wow, this is so much genius on one page. We have to put it on the cover.
Oh, it was just, I sent it in like this. Basically, I mean, they've done that in the past where they have, you know, winter, summer, fall.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll do that sometimes. It seemed like I think I might have pitched this as a cartoon inside initially. It's possible, but obviously this is based on a Norman Rockwell painting.
So good.
And this is a Chris Christie on the George Washington Bridge. The crazy thing about this is, I mean, aside from what it's about, you know, obviously it's when they stop the cars going across the bridge, but I learned to drive at 38 years old. I'm not a car person, and so I use photo reference for everything, and I happened to reference cars, oncoming traffic, and I found a nice picture with all these cars coming at you, and I drew that, but unbeknownst to me, there's a Citroën in the front there. I don't know from Citroën,
right?
But they don't make them here anymore. And apparently, Citroën drivers are really like it's a big part of their identity. So the first, I mean, not all, but a lot of the emails I got were from Citroën people. You know, like they recognized like I was signing them or something. And there were Citroën bloggers who wanted to interview me, and they wanted to make me their leader. You know, it was a crazy thing.
Finally, some recognition.
Exactly. But also, Chris Christie's on the cover.
And actually, the ball there, I love this one, but is there any reason the ball is striped?
No.
Who knows?
It looked like one of those kids' balls.
I didn't want them to have to ask.
I see. So. Yeah, no, I don't know. It was graphic. It was some kind of decision. I have no funny answer for it.
Fair enough.
And this is a Hillary Bernie diary. I mean, I miss drawing Bernie Sanders, of course. And this was also, the whole thing was an excuse to draw. I mean, you remember when that bird flew down on Bernie's podium while he was talking, and I drew that Subway pizza rat that was in videos. That seemed like more of an omen. Also, there's Hillary with ringing the New York Stock Exchange bell incognito. Okay, now we can talk about this clown.
Yeah.
It's about time. So this was my first Trump cover.
Right. I did have a question explicitly about this.
Okay.
How about I ask this really long, convoluted question?
Great.
And then...
I'll have a glass of water.
Perfect. Now I have to find it. Boy, where is that long, convoluted... Is that one? No, that one's, wow, what a question. Let's hold on to that one for later. Okay, so novelist Richard Ford, he wrote a book called Canada. And in an interview, he talked about the fact that book took him 20 years to write, but he didn't write it over 20 years. He had thought about it. He'd like sketched out some things, typed out some things, and he basically put it away, and then 20 years later, he came back to it. And so his idea was that it had been sort of baking and forming in his head over those 20 years, and then he finally sat down, and it was time. It was like ready to write. And I just wondered, with cartoons like this is one of my favorites of the stories I know about your work, but I know this initially started as a Hillary Clinton cartoon. And if you could talk a little bit about that, and then actually talk a little bit about that, and then I'll ask a different question about this cover specifically.
Okay.
7-part question, guys.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we're all asking for.
I'm going to answer the 7th part of your question first.
Please.
Actually, I think when Hillary she got into the race before Trump did, and so I had one of those dual diving boards where there's like a high one and a less high one. I had her about to dive off the top one, and then I had off the secondary diving board Bill like doing a florid, complicated dive, distracting from her. And that didn't go. They didn't go for that. But I think the diving board, I mean, it's not that imaginative a metaphor for diving, obviously diving into the race. And this was handed in as the first sketch I gave them. I called it Cannonball. I had them doing a cannonball, and they thought that was too triumphant.
Right.
I said, well, what about a belly flop? And they went for that.
Yeah, there's error in that. And to tie in the confusing first part of my question about Richard Ford, but this idea of a cartoon sort of living, I don't know, maybe that was just weeks or days between the Hillary Clinton and this one, but are there ideas that you have that you kind of, like it's a glimmer and then you sort of figure it out over time and then
Absolutely,
all of a sudden?
Yeah. I did one of, and I'll probably show it later, but of James Comey being pulled out of an airplane like that United passenger. And I had initially sketched it in my sketchbook when there were rumors about Steve Bannon being banished and being removed. I mean, he later was, but if I had done it as Steve Bannon, it wouldn't have worked at all.
Right.
And luckily, I never pitched it, and it worked. But as you know, it was more appropriate later. But back to Trump.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, this one was also sat around for a while. It was after he lost Iowa to Ted Cruz,
right.
And it seemed like he was finished because it was the first adversity he had seen. But then when he started winning again, and so much winning, we were tired of the winning, but during the Democratic convention, it seemed like maybe he was vulnerable, and so it ran then. And, it was fun to see him with his hair down, so to speak. And then Marco Rubio brought up his small hands. I don't know if he has small hands. I guess maybe they're small, but Spy magazine used to taunt him with that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can't just draw a small hand, but I guess if you make it a palm chart and say mean stuff about him in his own voice, like very big heart, but not like an enlarged heart or anything, perfect size. Or line of intellect, fantastic, continues on to back of hand. And beautiful singing voice, you'd be surprised. So that was the idea behind that. And then there was this one. And that's when he was, having some problem with women, when that videotape or that audio tape emerged, and there was stuff about him fat-shaming a Miss Universe
Did you
winner.
think he was going to lose at that point?
Yeah, I always thought he was going to lose.
Right, of course, yeah.
Until the night,
Yeah.
I thought he was going to lose.
Yeah.
And this is what the New Yorker, this is more dignified. It's nice to see someone else's work here, but this is their Ray Irvin's Eustace Tilley dandy that runs every year. I think it was the first cover of the magazine. And we did this. And obviously that's Putin and Trump as the object of his interest. And I guess the idea that ties us together was while I was sketching through this one, and then I went to a dinner party, because I sometimes leave the house, and I was sitting next to a Russian speaker, and it just occurred to me, I asked her to write on the napkin, what does the New Yorker look like in Cyrillic alphabet? And so she wrote it out, and we did that, and that turned into a big deal, because you're not allowed to send you don't get a bulk postal rate if the magazine title does not appear on the magazine, and it doesn't here.
Oh, wow.
So there were teams of lawyers that the New Yorker had to enlist to work this out. Ultimately, it says New Yorker in tiny type down the spine.
That's one. Actually, I remember that coming out, and that sort of, I was like, wow, like what a cool to do the title that way.
Yeah, it was fun to handwrite.
Yeah.
Not like drawing cats.
Right.
And then this was a tricky one because this came out the day before the election. So what are you going to do? I mean, Hillary's going to win, of course, but you can't show that in case something happens. So I thought this would work. You know, we don't know if the reader is a Trump supporter or a Hillary supporter, but he's upset, and so is the media that he's reading. I just didn't realize it would
And
be.
that one, I read that somebody was like, oh, great idea to put a pilot or a person who's going to jump out of an airplane with a parachute.
Right.
But that was totally
That's
accidental.
not what that person is. It's just a badly drawn girl. I mean, those are just supposed to be sunglasses, and her hair looks like a pilot's cap. I mean, stuff happens, you know?
Yeah.
I wish I had thought of that.
Right. Your brain was doing the work. That's the creative process.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing. I mean, you're going to draw Trump, you're eventually going to draw his ass.
Right.
And he was golfing a lot and seemingly destroying our institutions. So it was a hole in one.
You did a great job of giving him like the diaper as well in this one, like,
right,
that he wears when
there
he's
could be
golfing.
undergarments under there.
Yeah. This I love this one. And at first I didn't notice the broken windows, which
I think it's titled Broken Windows,
Yeah.
actually.
There you
and
go.
I
See?
didn't
Then I
title
got
it. Sometimes they're titled so there's no doubt.
Yeah. No, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but the
Okay.
idea that from any angle he's sort of fascinating to draw.
He totally is.
And like from behind even. Like
Right.
Is that
Especially from behind.
yeah. But is that head related, or is that, I mean, obviously it's the whole body here,
Yeah.
but do you think about his head as being interesting to draw from
Yeah,
behind?
for every angle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's wild.
I mean, that's part of his appeal is what he looks like, you
Right.
know? He could be I
Revolting.
was going to say an action figure, but an inaction figure.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the sketch that I presented to the New Yorker, and it's just a simplified, black and white drawing with a little more immediacy, alas, than the final artwork has. And this is where it starts, in a sketchbook.
Oh, wow.
So there's an arrow pointing to it. You can barely make it out, but I'm just sort of scribbling at home and thought of him, golfing there. And you can see the other rejected ideas that I didn't pursue. That's sort of like Frampton Comes Alive. It says Trumpton Comes Alive. Luckily, that didn't go anywhere. The one below it is like a Dallas JFK and Jackie. It's another terrific idea that I didn't pursue. And this is the final art as I send it in, as is this. And as much time as I have, I'll keep redrawing it. So these two are almost exactly the same. I don't really understand what the point of redrawing it is. I keep trying to go for some kind of looser, more immediate version. And the first one's usually is, I don't know how many of these I did, but
I've heard that you'll redraw them over and over. What's the fewest you would say?
I've done one.
Oh, really? Wow. So
Yeah.
you're just like, this
There's
is...
no, it's that, there's a courier waiting outside.
Oh, right. Yeah. We're like...
Yeah, deadlines. If there's time, I will try it again. I'm sure I could get a muddier version of the colors could be a little deader and ineffective. Anyway, here's Trump stuck in an MRI. I think it was a Trump Care drawing that didn't go anywhere. So these will be a few rejected Trump sketches.
Good, yeah.
Here he is getting a haircut on general anesthetic that I don't understand. Here he is at the shrink.
That one feels like it shouldn't have gotten rejected, that
Yeah,
last one.
well-
That sums it up.
This is sort of like a down and out Trump, with a couple of just things in his life that didn't quite go his way. He could be this guy on his way to off-track betting.
So Steve Bannon.
Well, this guy doesn't live where Steve Bannon lives.
Right.
This guy's got it rough. It's another one that didn't go, but it was fun to draw him naked. Here he is naked again. And this is right after he won. We went to an election party that, I got the hell out of there at like at 9:10. I knew that it was over, and I think I sketched this that night. I thought of an all-night pharmacy with people lined up outside, waiting for their Klonopin, their Ativan, their Xanax. Anyway, here's that one I was mentioning before, the Comey being dragged out of there. Fun to draw Jeff Sessions. Hope I don't have to draw him again, but who knows. And this is one I did not get to, actually I did manage to draw another half version, but Brexit happened on a Thursday night, and usually the magazine goes to press on Thursday night, so I didn't expect there would be but there was an email sent out to cover artists saying that, what's happened is historic. If anyone has any ideas, we're going to hold the cover we have at the press. And this just had to happen in about an hour and a half, which was insane.
And what's the name of that one? Silly
Walk Off a Cliff. Yeah, it's from Monty Python. Monty Python. If anything informed that presidential allergies image, I think it might be, absurdity that I probably learnt from Monty Python, and I've always loved that stuff. So, and I have a John Cleese wristwatch in my house that's hanging on a wall. It's a Silly Walk wristwatch, and the hands are the feet.
Oh, wow.
And I walk past it, a million times a day. I didn't know where this idea came from. Like, I scribbled it out, but probably you're influenced by your surroundings, obviously. And if you want to know any more about me, you can probably just Google me, I guess. But this was a drawing in Vanity Fair for an article about fame, or about, I think it was about fame. I think that's all the slides that I brought.
Cool. Very Blitt. I wanted to ask you about truth and humor. Recent Booker Prize winning author George Saunders once said, "Humor is what happens when we're told the truth quicker and more directly than we're used to."
Wow, that's a great quote.
Yeah, and looking at cartoons is like a zip line ride through just like things that just are so immediate. And so, I guess what I'm most impressed by is the idea that like you get to the center of the thing that we don't know is the center of the thing, and it happens so fast. And I wondered, is it that quick and unexpected for you, or sometimes are you really like, you're gnawing on an idea and you're just like, I know there's something here. Like, how, could you talk about that process?
I think probably the really good ideas, if any of them are really good, they're immediate, and they seem to sort of come out of nowhere. But I'm gnawing over things a lot. But, as far as, I'm just trying to make myself laugh, really.
Right.
If I was trying to look for the truth in things, I'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Is, like, that immediacy, are you kind of amazed by it? Because it just comes from something in you, right?
I guess. I don't know.
You just start.
Yeah, I'm scribbling, and I can't answer this question without sounding like an ass.
That's what I'm trying to get. I just want to. Is it like typically? Do you sit down every morning and you're like, okay, I'm gonna check out the news. I'm gonna write, or I'm gonna draw some things. Or are you walking around the house or making cereal, and all of a sudden, like the bowl hits the ground and you're running over to the, like, what's that sort of look like?
Yeah, I don't have a strict, rigid routine, although I'm pretty regular with my oatmeal, if you know what I mean. But I make oatmeal every morning and then go from there, I can't keep saying this wrong, but I'm at the drafting table as much as I can be, but I always have a sketchbook with me, and
Is there like a typical day that you would say, like the average day, post oatmeal, you sit Or do you read the news? Do you pull up an iPhone right
I mean,
when
I
you
sit
wake up?
in front of the computer and I spend too much time at it. The
Right.
computer's, I mean, it's great. There's so much access to so many different, points of view and immediate news. But it's a time waster, and Facebook's a killer, and email's a killer.
Do you have like a order in which you're like New York Times, Huffington Post, Fox News, or is there some sort of thing that you're consistent with in terms of
as reading?
Yeah.
And I usually go to Memorandum, which will send you to the New York Times, and I'll go to Drudge. I mean, I definitely read right-wing stuff. I don't consider myself right-wing at all, but
Right.
I think you really have to see everything. So
Right.
and
It's cool. So you've called Trump, quote, the gift that keeps on grifting. You said his hair is like frozen yogurt in slow motion. And you said his head is sculpted out of some kind of pudding. And I guess, like, what I wanted to ask about was, at the true bottom of his soul, it's just emptiness. But all he wants is attention, and any attention goes for him, negative, positive, whatever. And I wondered, do you struggle with knowing when you draw him that ultimately you're like
enabling him?
But so I wonder if you know that, then are you also trying to like tweak it a little bit harder so that it hurts? If you know what I mean.
I mean, I don't think he likes bad press. I mean, I think he wants to be loved as
I guess,
much.
yeah.
And I don't even. Does he see the New Yorker? There's.
Yeah.
With the internet, there's just so much stuff flying out there that I'm sure he's barely. I don't think about him seeing anything at all.
I mean, he's here in the audience tonight.
Oh,
so he's.
You know what? I was talking in Washington, and a few of us, as a goof, decided to go to the Trump Hotel and have a drink there.
Right.
And I was stupid enough there were four of us. I bought a tea and a glass of wine and I think a bourbon and a Bellini, and it was $70.
Wow. Norway
But anyway,
prices.
that's not what I wanted to. But people started standing up, and it was obvious that he was in the building. And I stood up too with my iPhone and ran over and got some pictures of him. I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to look into his eyes and and shake him. But I couldn't get near him. I got some pictures of him, but yeah, I mean, it's mania. It was weird to see him.
Wow, that's weird.
It is weird.
It's
But
like
there was
going,
no.
I was just going to say it's like going to the Hard Rock Cafe and the Rolling Stones show up.
Exactly. Well, maybe not
In
the
no
Rolling
way, shape, or
Stone.
form. On the Mount Rushmore of cartoonists, if you're curating it, so you get to pick 4, or you can just pick yourself 4 times.
Oh, that's yeah.
Who would you put on there?
The Mount Rushmore. I mean, Ed Sorel for sure, and Steve Brodner for sure, and the other. I mean, those two guys for sure. I'd have to think. I don't know.
That's a real throw you under the bus question.
It is a throw you under. I mean, I could. Who else would go on there? I mean, probably Thomas Nast, and maybe we leave one open.
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of time.
How many are there? 4 on there?
There are 4 on there.
Yeah,
So I mean,
okay.
I guess you've just opened up a space for yourself. I understand.
Yeah,
I like what you did there.
No.
Agatha Christie wrote 2 books a year, and one year she wrote 7. And she said, I'm a sausage machine, a perfect sausage machine. And I wondered, what food would you use to describe your work ethic, and why?
What food would I mean, I don't cook. I make oatmeal. I'd probably oatmeal, slow-cooked oatmeal.
Right.
Or not, you know what, it'd probably be instant oatmeal, unfortunately,
Right.
is what I would be.
Yeah, and why? Just because that's the only food you cook?
It's the only food I cook. It goes through you quickly. Probably that. It's gone, in 24 hours it's gone.
It's perfect. Last question, then we'll go to the audience. And then the 5-question lightning round awaits. Your drafting table, there's a picture in your book of your drafting table, and it just makes, it was an amazing sensation. Like, my chest swelled with anticipation of what you were going to do next. It's really an extraordinary shot. And I found a quote that that I thought was interesting. You said, I'm an adequatist. I would be happy with something adequate. Perfection's out of the question. But your drawing table, I'm like, something amazing is going to pop out of there. So I wonder, what is, like, how do you deal with that? Like, the adequatist, you obviously make incredible work, but like, where does perfection, where do you go like, nah, that's not what I'm shooting for?
Well, I mean, first of all, in context, the writer, it was a writer from Mother Jones, she asked me if I was a perfectionist.
Right.
And yeah, the concept of being a perfectionist is, it's a difficult one. I mean, you're trying to do the best work possible you can, but perfection doesn't exist, you know? I mean, I can see perfection in Ed Sorel's work or in Brodner's work, but, you know, it's not even in the equation.
Right.
As far as, and I'm sure that both of them are tortured over, you know, if there's some, I can feel a little bit better about that, because I'm sure they're unhappy with what they're doing. Hopefully they are. I'm counting on it.
Right. And then, is there, what would you, and this is where you know, you're not going to like this question, but what's the cover you've done that you feel is closest to perfection?
Closest to perfection? Well, I mean, the ones I can stand seem to be, you know, stuff I did longer ago, so I've gotten used to them. You know, I'm not looking at, look what I did with the jacket, Jesus Christ.
Right.
So, I mean, the Bush cabinet in Hurricane Katrina, that, I guess it doesn't upset me as much as some of the more recent ones.
Right. I would say probably my favorite is the Trump in the little car, tilting back and forth. I just thought, like, that to me, like, sums up, gets to the center of things in a really
yeah, I mean, crazily enough, when you asked me that question, I was answering it as just from the technical area of it, because that's what I'm most frustrated with. If you're talking about the idea, I mean, I think the Ahmadinejad one, that seems to tie two stories that are so separate. Yeah,
that's cool. Okay, audience, we're going to go to you guys and girls, and otherwise. So I guess I'll look to you guys. We have 2 microphones that can be run up into the audience. If you're in the middle, we might, who knows what's going to happen, but we'll find out. If you have a question, raise your hand, and we're going to start with this person with
Start
an
here in the
arm.
back.
In the back. Here we go. Hold on to your hat, literally in this case.
Hi, thank you for coming. I have a question. I have my 2 teenagers here, and we're living in a city where the expectation is you become a banker, or a doctor, or a lawyer, and I brought him here to see that there's other jobs. What were you like in high school?
Take a look at me. I'm sure you can. I was painfully shy, and I was drawing, and I was drawing a lot of hockey players, and I don't know. I really, do we have to?
Next question on this side.
Sorry, that was a terrible answer for your 2 kids. You know.
But you loved drawing at that age.
Oh, I was drawing all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you draw for the week?
Did I draw for the week? You mean the magazine The Week? Or? I never have, actually. Do you know anyone over there?
Amazing. Do we have...
We have a question here in the center.
Hello. I was curious if you'd ever, are you familiar with the cartoons, political cartoons of R. Cobb, C-O-B-B?
I am not. I mean, maybe I know them to see them.
Those are from the 70s, 60s.
Huh.
Check it out.
I should. There's huge gaps in my knowledge. You saw when I tried to answer the Mount Rushmore question, how I whiffed on that one. But I'll look up R. Cobb.
Not Crumb, but Cobb.
Right. Maybe R. Crumb could go on that. He would definitely go on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for pushing me in that direction, though.
What are the timelines like? Does someone call you and say, can you do next week, next month, 2 weeks?
Generally, because I'm doing topical stuff these days, it's a Tuesday morning, and I will either have an idea or they'll put out a note to some artists saying it would be great to have something, and then it's due Thursday generally. So, I mean, there have been times when it's Wednesday night and they haven't made up their mind yet, so it gets pretty hairy. At the beginning, I was doing less topical stuff, and so I would have some weeks to do them, and I could fret about it longer.
And just to walk through that process, so basically, they put out a call, if that's sort of what they're doing, and then you'll do you'll do a quick sketch that is a little, it's, you know, the beginning kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you'll scan that, or you'll...
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is generally, I mean, sometimes they'll put out a call, other times that they welcome submissions just unsolicited from artists and stuff. But yeah, generally I'll scribble in a sketchbook like I did with that first very rudimentary Trump golfing drawing. I'll just fill pages of stuff, and then I'll look over it and say, okay, I'll draw this one, that one, and I'll draw them in black and white a little bit bigger so that they're legible and can be understood.
And then you'll send it to them, and then Francoise will be, or somebody will be like, will they call you and talk about it? Is that
Francoise generally will, yeah. She'll say, I'm going to show this to David, I'm not going to show him this one, this is ridiculous. Or, you know, but I think he'll like these two, and then you see what happens.
And then it goes to David, he goes, genius. And then they come back to you and say, go for it? Like,
Yeah,
full...
I mean, so I think sometimes maybe Francoise will, he won't like something, she might try and push him in a certain direction or not, but yeah, then they'll come back and...
And then from that beginning sketch to like a fully functioning, like capable to be on there, what's the timeline for you there?
I mean, like the Brexit cover, I think it was an hour and a half.
Wow.
It was really quick.
Wow, that's
It was
amazing.
insane.
Yeah, very cool.
Next question here in the front.
So when I get a new issue, I'll go through and I'll look at all the cartoons. I'm looking for a little diversion of reality. And sometimes it's like, none of this it's not funny. It's just, I'm thinking, is it contagious? Is there like a depression running through all the cartoonists at that particular issue? And the other thing is, how about the fourth figure at Mount Rushmore? How about a woman? How about somebody like Palin? Palin? Sorry about the Palin. And would you do her with or without glasses if you're going to do her on Mount Rushmore?
There's a lot to unpack there.
There really is a lot to unpack. We're going to have a separate seminar for that question. And we're going to break off into discussion groups. Sarah, it was a Mount Rushmore of cartoonists, so Sarah Palin's not a cartoonist, so we can't, that doesn't really work. The cartoons not being funny. So first you tell us that the cartoons aren't being funny, and then you tell us the Sarah Palin joke. I'm just saying is all. A lot of people don't find. I mean, I've heard that before. I think the New Yorker cartoons are really, really funny, and I'm intimidated to send cartoons to inside the magazine because I think the cartoonists there are incredible.
Question over here on the right.
Oh, real
Sorry.
quick. What's one woman cartoonist that you're like, yeah, she's in the running for the Rushmore? Is there somebody that
Yes, absolutely. Cartoonist. I don't know if you know her in the Washington Post. I think she's just fantastic.
Yeah.
She's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and her drawings of Trump are amazing. She draws him with rosacea, a very, very convincing rosacea.
Yeah.
And I think she's amazing. I put her on the...
Yeah.
Question over here on the right.
It seems to me that what you're doing is it's something like stand-up. You're taking a concept and turning...
I am standing up.
And
Sorry.
I only wish. You're taking a concept and turning it into a drawing, the way a stand-up guy turns it into a joke. And it seems to me that you're very related to someone like A, Woody Allen, B, Roz Chast, or even C, that old cartoonist, I think it was Peter Arno, used to draw the vampires and the people coming off the cliffs. I'm wondering what you think about that.
I think it's going for laughs. It's certainly a similar deal. Absolutely.
Next question here in the front.
It is like a premise, act out, punchline. Like that, yeah, it's interesting. I think that.
Yeah, question here in the front. Do you work in a solitary way, or do you have somebody you can run ideas by, your wife, or somebody you trust with some initial ideas? And then second, if you have a sketch that you send in that you really love and Francoise rejects it, do you get hurt feelings, or have you done this enough so that it's like you're fine?
Well, I mean, I do work in a solitary way. I will sometimes show things to my wife, but I'm a little bit crazy at that point when I'm sketching them at the beginning. I sort of don't want anyone to see them, and I'm, even reluctant to show them to Francoise sometimes. And do I get hurt feelings? No. I mean, I think if I think it's a good idea, generally, I mean, a lot of the stuff I send in is just sort of, it's sort of filler. It sort of hurts worse when I send in some filler and they like it and I have to draw it. But I'm almost relieved when I'm told, oh, don't worry, none of these work. You don't have to draw anything. So it's a crazy way to be.
Another question down here in the front.
What was the spark that started your fabulous humor?
Spark that started my fabulous what? Humor. Oh, geez. I don't know. Obviously, I'm overcompensating for something. My father, too, is exactly the same way. My father was delighted with himself all the time, and I think I'm dealing with that somehow, or I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a hard question to answer, but I think it is overcompensating.
Next question here in the front, Barry.
Yeah, I have no idea
Over
where
here.
I'm looking. Okay.
Hi, thank you. I love your covers, and it's a delight to see them tonight. Tell us about a time when you realized you stepped over the line and what you did about it.
Stepped over the line, what I did about it. I mean, like with the Obama fist bump cover, I brought that in. It was really last minute, and I didn't have a great scanner, and I drove into New York City with the artwork and brought it. And I remember Francois showing it to the production person, and his face turned white. And he was white, but I mean, he turned whiter. And I thought, maybe this is a mistake. And but I didn't do anything about it. I'm not kidding when I say that I'll send drawings off, and I wish I could have done a better job, or wish the idea was better, and I have to force myself to just send them out and live with them. So, so they're out there, and I don't rethink it. I just worry about the next one.
Question over here on the right.
Okay.
Hi, I am a banker, and I want to know, how do you get paid? Is it like a lot more for the cover?
It's all in Bitcoin. You want me to answer that? Oh,
10 times more for a cover? Or
10 times more than what?
than an inside cartoon. Like
I don't know what, I mean, I've done three inside, I can't remember what I got for those, but yeah, it's a cover, you get more for that. But yeah, I'm not going to give you numbers or anything like that. Do you know somewhere good to park the money? Is that what you're saying?
I'll give you my card later.
Okay, perfect.
Next question here in the front.
Barry, is this the first compilation of your covers? And what's it like to be on book tour? And are you going to the middle of the country with this book?
Yeah, I'm not going to the middle of the country. Until I went and visited my son in London recently, I hadn't been in an airplane in 18 years. I'm a coward, and I'm used to sitting in my room. So, I mean, the flight here from Newark was, everyone around seemed calm, but I was dying in there. And so that part of it, I mean, it's great to walk around here, and it's great to be forced to everything's so three-dimensional. It's nice, but the traveling is difficult. I forget what else you asked. Oh, this is definitely the first compilation, yes. An editor from Riverhead, the great Jeff Klosky, who runs that house, suggested it, and I mean, it's what every illustrator, I think, wants to do is put all your work together, and it's nice to show sketches that normally aren't seen, the rough sketches, so. I didn't say that. It was nice to do the book.
Have you had any weird experiences on book tour? Has there been anything that you're like, I'm only going to tell these guys?
Weird experience. I mean, I saw Donald Trump in the Trump Hotel.
Right, that's pretty odd.
That was weird.
He was off a golf course. You couldn't.
He was off a golf. Yeah, you could barely recognize him without a caddy. Weird experiences. There probably have been weird experiences, but I've got a lot of Ativan in me.
Right. Yeah.
You know. So.
Fair enough.
I think we're ready to.
All right.
Any more? Yeah.
One more?
Nope.
Okay. This doesn't help. I think I can't. There's some. Okay. We're going to move on to the lightning round. I do want to say after the show, so he'll be signing books, and I know everybody's like, well, I've got things to spend money on, but honestly, buy a book. It will mean a lot to him. It will mean so much. No, but it really will. It'll mean a ton to him. If you do, he came all this way, 18 years to be on a flight.
What are you making him feel guilty for?
Yeah, exactly. So I shame you into buying a book. No, but please do. And if you do, let me make sure. Yeah, Books Inc. in Laurel Village is selling the books, and I can't tell you how much bookstores appreciate when you buy books. And I'll just tell you a little story to make you feel good. And then Dorothy Parker, who she is awesome. She once wrote a poem in which she said, I wish I could drink like a lady. I could take 1 or 2 at the most. 3 and I'm under the table. 4 and I'm under the host. She's great. When she died, she gave all of her money to Martin Luther King Jr., a man she had never met. And he died very tragically. And so now her estate went to the NAACP, basically, or not her whole estate. But anyway, every Dorothy Parker book you buy, some of that money goes to the NAACP. Every Barry Blitt book you buy, he's cashing in. So let's... I wasn't going to say that last part, but then I realized there was no finish to that story. But come on. Okay. So now nobody's going to buy one of your books. I feel like I guilted them and now I've freed them, but please, if you can. And everybody will just, if you have that on your coffee table, you can just be condescending and be like, okay, I'm smarter than you. Okay. Lightning round, 5 questions, multiple choice.
That wasn't just the lightning round?
No, it feels like it was. Here we go. If all but one of your biggest influences never existed, which would you save? Mad Magazine, Norman Rockwell, or Popeye?
Wow, that's a great question. I would probably have to save, sentiment aside, I would have to save Mad Magazine.
Excellent choice. All right. One of these people replaces Donald Trump in 2020. Which is the best for your cartooning career? Mark Cuban, The Rock, Oprah Winfrey, or Mark Zuckerberg?
For my career, probably Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, well, I would have guessed The Rock, but what do I know? You're offered free tickets to one of 2 events. Do you choose Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2019 between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Edmonton Oilers?
That's what I would choose.
You don't even need to hear the second. But hold on. Let me ask. Or Game 7 of the World Series in 2020 between the Montreal Expos, they've come back, and the Chicago Cubs.
That would be the Penguins.
It'd be the Penguins.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. 2 more to go, and we've got them on the edge of our seat. They're like, I want to go buy this book. Favorite berry, Bonds, Gibb, Goldwater, or White?
Bonds, Gibb,
This is the namesake question.
White. Gibb, absolutely.
Oh, wow, no question asked. And finally, you're duped into taking a deplorables road trip. Do you drive Berlin to Zagreb with Ben Carson, Jeff Sessions, and Betsy DeVos? Or Brussels to Barcelona with Scott Pruitt, Steve Bannon, and Kellyanne Conway? What a road trip either way.
I want to be where Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway are.
Could you imagine actually being in a car with any group of those 3 people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be on the road trip. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry Blitt. Thank you very much, Barry.
You were great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Guys, we'll see you out in the lobby where you're all going to buy the book. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the JCCSF. We'll see you in a short minute.